Good evening. This is Creativity at Work, and I'm your host, Dave Tyson. This evening, our guest is Dr. Eugene Mallove. Good evening, Gene.
How do you do, Dave? Great to be on the show.
Good to see you again. You have been an expert on cold fusion, and what we'd like to know is what's going on with cold fusion these days?
Well, there's a lot more going on than one hears in the press, that's for sure. You know, when the discovery was announced at the University of Utah in 1989, for a while it had quite a bit of play in the media, and then it seemed to have disappeared because allegedly the famous laboratories of Caltech and MIT and the Harwell Laboratory in England had shown that there was nothing there, that this amazing claim of Pons and Fleischmann to have gotten much more heat out of their cold fusion cell than was going in. There's a little cold fusion cell in my book, Fire from Ice, tells the story of the thing. They said, we can't find it. Pons and Fleischmann are alive. They weren't killed by radiation from their experiment. Therefore, the whole thing is wrong. Well, it turns out, actually, Dave, that the field is alive and well, particularly in Japan, where there is a national program to develop this source of energy. It has no known explanation, but it is a potent technological development.
Let me interrupt you for a minute.
Sure.
First, what is cold fusion?
If I knew exactly how cold fusion works, or worked, or still works, okay? If I knew how, and I could write that up in a paper and have it accepted in a journal and have everyone agree that that is what this explanation is for this excess heat, I'd win a Nobel Prize. There are dozens of researchers today, theorists, who are trying to explain this phenomenon. That the phenomenon exists is no longer in doubt. What it is remains to be explained.
I guess what I was looking for was an explanation that our viewers could understand in terms of generation of excess heat.
Okay. What it does for the world is revolutionize the world. It ends the fossil fuel age and so forth in the following way. There is something in water that we did not know about before. There is an energy source in water that is completely beyond our understanding at the moment. The conventional way of thinking about this, the cold fusion dogma, so to speak, today, is that there probably are some nuclear reactions occurring in these water-based systems in the cold fusion technology that allows spectacular heat to come out, much more than in any nuclear reaction so far known.
You're saying that in terms of energy in, energy out relationships,
yes,
that and let's use the word cold fusion just for...
It's a semantic term.
Yeah.
It is a placeholder.
Yeah.
It is a...
that in the various cold fusion experiments, they have been able to generate higher ratios of heat than in the so-called hot fusion?
Hot fusion has never generated a single watt of extra power. Their power is in the form of radiation, number one. Number two, they have never generated more power out than input, whereas cold fusion on day one in the Pons-Fleischmann cell was generating immediately, from the day it was announced, more power out than in. Now today, in Japan, there are some types of solid-state cold fusion devices that produce 70,000 to 1 ratios. They're still in the experimental stage, but in these very hot chambers that they have, they can create enormous energy with minimal input. And at the same time, the reason this word fusion gets in there is that the materials that we're started with is heavy hydrogen, typically, which is present in all water. You know, water's H2O, but in the case of heavy hydrogen, which is 1/7000th of all hydrogen on Earth, this hydrogen form is the form that typically was used. Now they found in cold fusion experiments that have now been patented by Dr. James Patterson, okay, the first United States patent that was almost accidentally granted, okay, for this process. There's a war against the other 200 patents patent applications that have been applied for. They have a cell that reliably produces 5-to-1, 10-to-1 power ratios using ordinary water. They have little plastic beads coated with nickel and palladium, and it's a marvel. At the 5th International Conference on Cold Fusion in Monaco, Monte Carlo, Monaco, what I just got back from in April, they had this there, working in public. Anyone who wanted to, skeptic or supporter of cold fusion, could check it out, and it checks out perfectly. It works every time.
I've been busy recently watching court trials, and I now have become an expert in questioning experts.
Yes.
What qualifies you to talk about cold fusion?
All right. Well, I would say because I'm an engineer and because I'm also a journalist, I'm the editor of this magazine, Infinite Energy, and I've been pursuing cold fusion since it started. So I've investigated it. Now, the people who disparaged cold fusion, by contrast, they did the hit and run in the beginning, such as my former colleagues at MIT. They had $30 million a year for their laboratory in hot fusion, which was going to give us a power source in the year 2050. They did some experiments in 1989 to try to verify Pons and Fleischmann. As it turns out, they got some positive results, but they didn't like those positive results. They didn't want to show them in public, so they pushed it aside, changed the data a little bit so that no one would get too excited. They didn't really think they had found cold fusion, by the way, but they left.
Are you telling me that respectable scientists fudge the data?
Absolutely. Happens all the time. Even some correct discoveries have had fudge data. But in this case, they got some excess heat, they didn't like it, and it was too embarrassing, and besides, their $200,000 a year salary, the director of the lab at MIT, his salary would have been gone if this was correct. Well, this is correct, and now we are not only on the verge, thankfully, of either eliminating the Department of Energy, more power to them, but certainly eliminating much of the hot fusion budget, which is $500 million a year. It's going to be cut back minimum 38%.
Who's stimulating the cutback?
Well, this would have happened anyway due to the budget cuts. No one is cutting hot fusion now because they believe in cold fusion. See, the source of the whole problem in this field is none other than the Department of Energy. They had a panel in 1989 of biased individuals. The record shows it. Basically, it was like having a panel of jurors who were prejudiced from day one. It can be proved that they were. And they were the ones who were given the responsibility to find out, is this amazing discovery in the United States correct or is it not correct? While the data was still hot, while people were still finding things, these guys were off writing a negative report. And then no matter what experiment came to pass afterwards, even experiments that gave them the data they were looking for in 1989, it didn't make any difference. It was like Galileo and the telescope all over again.
You're just reading my mind.
Well, but, you know, they wanted helium-4. They said, look, you think you're getting a nuclear reaction, show us some helium-4. Well, here it is. This experiment on the cover of the first issue of the magazine that came out only a couple of months ago shows over and over again we can get, or Roger Stringham, the inventor, can get helium-4 where no helium-4 existed. This is a transmutation of an element. This is a shocking thing, but it's there.
I remember that someone said to me that the significance of the cold fusion experiments had nothing to do with heat. That what it really had to do with was the understanding of the potential for this transmutation, the transmuting of materials.
That is correct. There are two major heresies here, gigantic heresies, possibly the largest heresies that we've faced in our lifetime, our brief lifetimes. One is that it is possible to get more energy out than in from an unknown source, whether it's a nuclear reaction or whatever. It's coming from hydrogen materials, which is abundant, which means once it's technologically developed, the complete end of the fossil fuel era, the end of fission, certainly the end of hot fusion, even the end, I would have to say, of other forms of alternative energy, such as solar power, geothermal, wind energy. Those are very fine and good, but they can't even begin to compare with a compact source. The other heresy that is implicit in all this is the ability at normal temperatures to transmute elements. And even skeptics have now found, they wish they hadn't found it in their experiments, they found changes in the heavy metals. They found rhodium and ruthenium and silver being produced in palladium cathodes. They can't explain this. It is unexplained, but it is, you might say it's a miracle.
Well, not that we don't need miracles nowadays.
Scientific miracle, certainly.
But I've been busy watching astronomy recently, and it seems that in outer space, all kinds of chemical transformations are busy taking place.
Chemical transmutation, transformations. See, the wall that divides chemistry and physics was thought to be inviolate. Here you have an atom with a nucleus, a tiny little nucleus. It's the size of a pea, and the electron cloud around it is like the size of a baseball stadium, all right? And all we know, life, chemistry, what you do in the high school chem lab and so forth, it all involves the outside of the atom, the electron cloud. That's how atoms combine together. You burn hydrogen with oxygen, it joins together, forms H2O. But the nucleus of hydrogen, the proton, and the nucleus of oxygen is not touched, it's not changed. And since the latter part of the 19th century, and the beginning part of the 20th century, when we learned what the structure of the atom was, that there was a nucleus and there were electrons, the central dogma, which we all have accepted, I accepted it certainly, you cannot have a nuclear reaction except in a high-energy accelerator, like the kind you build for billions of dollars in Texas, you know, the hole in the ground, 54 miles around, or perhaps in a hot fusion reactor, you know, where you create the conditions of the sun in a reactor on Earth. But what we now find over and over again in cold fusion experiments is that elements are changing, they're transmuting.
And they're transmuting at
room temperature.
nominal temperature.
Nominally room temperature. That's not to say that the effective temperature and whatever is going on to create this miraculous effect. When I say miraculous effect, I say it not literally that it's a religious miracle of some sort, please. I say it in that by all we understood before, and all I personally understood as an engineer and a scientist, this couldn't happen. But it does happen.
Where does physics come in?
Physics is the other side of the coin. Physicists, you know, are the people who gave us the atomic bomb, and they gave us all sorts of theories of the universe, and, you know, going back to Newton. Physicists have been primary in the drive to advance the frontiers of knowledge. Along came two chemists in Utah, world-respected chemists, Dr. Stanley Pons and Dr. Martin Fleischmann, on March 23rd, 1989. And they announced, hey, physicists, we have done something in our little cell which you haven't done and don't plan to do until the year 2050. You want $500 million a year to build us a hot fusion reactor in the year 2050 that will have lots of radiation, but it will still use hydrogen from water. Guess what? We can do it now. The physicists didn't like that, okay? That's why they got so hot under the collar about this, and why anyone today, including myself, who's involved in this field, is not very well respected in the circles of mainline physics. But we're right, and they're wrong.
How does quantum physics apply in this?
Well, you know, we are...
Or Newtonian physics.
Sure, well, you see, we may be faced, there are two possibilities here. Assuming the data is correct, for the sake of argument, assume the data is correct. I mean, I know it's correct. I was a skeptic myself at one time. For for the first year, let's say, and then I increasingly accepted hey, the evidence is shouting at us, it's there. But okay, for those who don't believe this yet, assume for the moment that it is real. Now, we can go along two possible paths. One, new physics, radically new physics, a crack in physical law somewhere that we didn't understand. We crossed the wrong bridge somewhere, and we have to kind of back up and redefine things. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that we can take quantum mechanics, take relativity, take all we know, and use it like a toolkit. That's what scientists usually do. They take what's known already in theory, and they say, aha, in this new system, we can use those laws in such and such a way, and we can explain it. For example, my friend Dr. Peter Hagelstein at MIT, professor of electrical engineering, he's trying to use neutron hopping reactions to explain cold fusion. Keith Johnson, another professor, friend of mine at MIT, he wants to explain it according to some other vibrational states, Ion-Teller vibrations in the electron cloud of the atom. Plus possible nuclear reactions also. So there are many different ideas, but using conventional physics. Now, I would say, I'm not a physicist, okay? I consider myself a scientist and an engineer, intensely interested in the technological applications of this. That's the most important thing for the world. But I would say it seems increasingly likely to me that there is going to be some new physics here. And it may be that what Pons and Fleischmann originally thought they had and what others today still think they have, namely a marvelous new kind of nuclear reaction, it may not be that at all. It may be something much more profound than that.
Quantum physics part 2.
Yes, quantum physics part 2. And if you want a little inkling of what that might be, and then the hook comes here and takes me off stage. I'll tell you what it might be. There are theories today of what is called zero-point energy, that is the quantum fluctuations of space. This is accepted, by the way, by physics, that way down at the microscopic level, way below the size even of nuclei and parts of nuclei, there are these fluctuations in space. Several serious theorists have put forth the idea that it might be possible to tap that zero-point energy and thus extract energy from the vacuum. And perhaps that is why we are not seeing the nuclear products in cold fusion that would be commensurate with the heat. That may be the reason. Some people think it is, others think it's not.
What has been the most efficient system so far? Which of the various flavors now give us the greatest bang for the buck?
Well, something like this. We don't know whether this works. This is being tested now in a rented lab space in Bow, New Hampshire. This is made, by the way, in a former province of Russia, Moldova. And it's a cavitation device. High pressure water goes in here.
What material is it made of?
Steel.
Steel.
Nothing special about this. It's plumbing. In fact, for the last 2 months, we've been doing a lot of plumbing in Bow. My father's a plumber, so that kind of fits in with my background. But we don't know whether this is real. That is, this is producing excess energy through intense cavitation in here. However, we have seen other devices in the United States that do produce kilowatts of extra thermal energy right now. There's a product in Georgia that's selling on the market now that does that.
When I look at something like this, what I think of is the induction exhaust system on an internal combustion engine.
Yeah, it looks dumb, doesn't it?
No, it's you know, the whole problem of controlling the flow of the gas-air mixture. What is in that tube? I mean, when it's functioning.
Well, the main thing of interest about this tube is the fluid, the complex fluid mechanics that would be in it. Now, if someone 6 years ago had said, Eugene Mallove is going to be examining a piece of plumbing in 1995 to check for more heat coming out than electric power going into the pump that's driving this whole thing, I would have said, you're crazy. I would never do such a thing. It's just that I went down to Georgia and I witnessed and measured it for myself, a device called a hydrosonic pump, which you can buy today, and it heats buildings already. It's already heating buildings. What they found, and they were not cold fusion people, these people at Hydrodynamics, Inc. They were people who were just involved in a heating device that would prevent, would allow a building not to have fuel oil in it, you know. You just run the thing electrically, drive a pump, and get heat out. I measured it myself. I found out that this was producing many kilowatts more of thermal energy than was going in electrically. I wasn't the first to find that. I had to see it with my own eyes. I saw it, I checked the data over and over again. Others came in and checked it again. They used dynamometers to check the mechanical power going in. Over and over again, the answer comes out, kilowatts of extra energy. So you ask me, what's the most potent? That's it. And this might be it too. Possibly.
What was the fluid?
Water. That's it, water.
Okay.
That's it,
So
just pure water. We're talking, I know it's very hard to get into this orientation here.
Wait.
Yeah.
What we're doing is pumping water through this tube, and in the cavitation process, its velocity increases, right?
Bubbles get created, yes. Here you have a very intense vortex in this part of the system. The water comes in, it's a jet, and then it exits there. It needs to be a hole drilled here and so forth. But that's it in essence.
And there are no mechanical moving parts.
Other than the centrifugal pump, which is used to push water at high pressure and high velocity in this tube.
And do you have any idea of the pressure curve?
Yes.
How high do you have to go before you actually get the effect?
Well, first of all, I'll give you the preliminary report. We haven't seen the effect in this one. Now, a colleague of mine is going to St. Petersburg, Russia, within the next 2 weeks to see the full setup. Here's a Russian cosmonaut being seen with the unit, and a senior official of the space program of Russia right there. And that's what the units look like, and they've sold thousands of these in Russia. Now, it may not be, here's the pump, all right, and here is the cavitating device, and you pressurize it this way, and you get heat out, and then it goes into a radiator system. Maybe it's nonsense. Maybe this particular device is not, will turn out not to be valid. We don't know yet. We're giving it a chance, because we're scientists, that's all. We want to find out if it works. Even if it worked, we wouldn't know how it worked. All we would know is the conditions that made the heat come out. And so we're in a new area, looking at things, trying to put the puzzle together.
That device is now available in Eastern Europe.
That is correct. It's heating homes and large buildings.
Heating homes and large buildings.
That is correct. Whether it's putting out whether it is putting out more heat than is going in electrically to the pump remains to be seen. One would not understand why it would be in demand there as it is, if that were the case, but I don't know the mentality of Eastern Europe. I know the mentality of the United States. And the mentality of the United States is such that when we finally win the cold fusion war, which we definitely will, okay, we're going to end all fossil fuel usage, period.
What are the drawbacks of these systems?
The drawbacks at the moment are that no one, that I shouldn't say no one, it has been officially neglected. For example, when candidate Clinton was in this area in 1992, he promised to investigate it. To me, I have it on tape. He told me that he would. He did nothing of the kind, okay? He, through his Department of Energy, increased the hot fusion budget until it was recently cut by the Congress. Secondly, Vice President Gore, as an example, was presented by a senior official at Apple Computer Corporation with the information about cold fusion. He said, don't even give it to me, it's too controversial, get rid of it. And that's what happens over and over again. It all goes back, and this is heavy Watergate. It's not Whitewater, it's not Watergate, it's not Waco or Wacko, it is heavy Watergate. And this scandal, it's amazing that this scandal is continuing. An American invention kicked out of the United States, being now in the hands of Japan. Japan takes it seriously and we don't.
It seems to me that if we have the intention of leading the world in technology, and unless, of course, we own all the coal mines and all the oil wells, that we would be spending a great deal of time and effort in order to find out, one, the old engineering, what I refer to as the old English engineering way, make it hot, and we don't care why it works. But it seems to be a two-step thing. One, there's a potential for high energy output. But two, there's also a potential for changing materials.
Yes, and remediating nuclear waste, by the way. That's another prospect that cold fusion has given us.
Well, I must say that, one, I'm glad you were able to come by again
Delighted to be here.
and bring us up to date on cold, lukewarm,
Hot,
fusion.
some fusion.
Yeah. Give us a wag, a wild-ass guess of what do you think this will come to pass?
I think that there will be products soon. And what is soon? Soon means in the next few years you will begin to see products on the market. In effect, there already is one. The hydrosonic pump is for sale. Anyone could buy one of those now, and a good engineer could verify that it's working and heating buildings.
Well, as I said, thank you very much for coming by. You've been very informative, and we're looking forward to your next issue, your next bulletin on cold fusion.
Good. Thank you, David.
This is Creativity at Work. I'm your host, Dave Tyson. Dr. Eugene Mallove and I have been discussing cold fusion, a topic of great interest and apparently with a great future.